Why is he coming up to us?
Because this is Murray's friend. Or Gary. Gary and Murray.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. What are you doing here?
I want to be part of the show.
He knows.
Well, he knows I've got something for him. There you go. Take it away, please. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Welcome. Oh no, I'll just eat it. Welcome this morning, guys, to Raptor Domain. My name's Billy. Myself and Chantel will be presenting your bird show this morning. You'll meet her in just a little while. Before we get started on our bird show this morning, a couple of little ground rules and guidelines to go across. Obviously, we've got a nice sized group with us, so we want to make sure that everybody has a wonderful, enjoyable show. I want to make sure that my birds are safe and you're safe as well. So please do listen up, at least for these first couple of minutes. We'll be talking to you about birds for the next hour, so if you don't like birds and you want to tune out, that's fine. But this bit is quite important, so please do listen up. Obviously, you've come to see a free flight bird show. Hopefully you all know that by now. And what that means is we're going to have lots of birds that are flying around out here untethered, doing all sorts of different things. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some fast, some slow. But what it does mean is it's quite important for you all to keep your seat. Yeah, good. Quite important for you all to keep your seat once we get our birds started. The main reason for that is if you stand up and walk around at the wrong time, you might scare something. And if you scare something, it takes us 10 or 12 hours to get it back in the bush sometimes. Or if there's something really fast flying in the same pathway that you're standing up in, maybe you meet each other head on, and that won't be fun for either of you. So make sure you do sit down. If you do need to leave your arena to use the bathroom or anything like that, try and do it at a time when there's not a bird directly in the arena, and be mindful that sometimes we'll send birds out the door, so they might be coming out. Just make sure you're not going to stand up and walk into something. The other exception to that, of course, is if we ask for volunteers. We like to get pretty interactive with our bird shows here, so if you are keen and we ask for volunteers, stick your hand up in the air. Please don't all come running out at the same time. It is tempting, but we do pick people out and we'll generally describe you by your clothing so that you know who we're talking to. Stick your hand up in the air, come on down. You'll notice on both ends of the arena we've got some of our gear. So there's a couple of gloves on either end and a couple of the little wetsuit looking neoprene sleeves there. Different birds need different things, so we'll tell you what you're looking for. One more, that's all you get. We'll tell you what bit of gear you need for which animal, but if you've never worn a glove before, pretty simple. They're all left-handed, they fit on your left hand, so get your left hand, get on in there and pull it on there as tight as you possibly can. Once you're waiting for a bird, make a fist, thumb on top like that, and you wait for the bird to come to you. Now keep in mind, if you were a bird and you landed on something and it went like that, or you flinched away, you're probably not going to land there. So stay nice and still, nice and strong. Basically like you're holding a big jug of water. You don't want to spill your water and you don't want to drop it. So nice strong fist, and wait for us to either bring you a bird or send you a bird. We'll tell you which birds you can and can't touch. Some of them are pretty sensitive to that sort of thing, others not so much. So make sure you listen out with each bird for the guidelines that we give you. Now we've got a white back. Now we say white back Macaw for this part of the country, but they don't all have white backs. If he was a young boy, he would have a mottled grey back, or if he was a female, he'd have a bit of mottled colour on his back there as well. But he's a mature boy, so he is full white back, and we know that he is a male as well. Now Digby presents a really good opportunity for us to give you your first environmental message of the morning, and that message is, oh, that was a bit of a noise. That message is pretty simple, and that's that we should all put our rubbish in the bin. Well done. Can you get the other one for me, buddy? He's a pretty clever boy, old Diggs, and he knows what's good. Obviously in the wild, mostly magpies are probably going to be doing the opposite, but it's one of the easiest things we can all do. And throughout our show today, we will give you little tips. With each bird, we'll tell you different things that you can do to try and make your environment a healthier place, make your environment a more beautiful place. And obviously easy things as well. I'm not going to go out there and tell you to buy a brand new Tesla or anything like that, unless you want to, of course. But easy, cheap, simple things that you can take home and you can change. We don't all have to change our whole life all at once, but if we can make little changes here and there, it can actually make a pretty big difference. So put your rubbish in the bin, and it doesn't even have to be yours. If you're walking around, see a plastic bottle in the scrub, just grab it, chuck it in the bin. It's not a big deal, and it can make a big, big difference. When you first get a bird, you go, well, I think it's a female, or I think it's a male, and then one day it starts laying eggs or vice versa. So you go, well, okay. And she's been called Donald for her whole life, so it'd be rude to change it now. But Donald is a bush stone curlew, also known as a bush thick-knee, which is a bird that's native to Kangaroo Island, and also native to a fairly broad part of the Australian mainland. These two are tawny frogmouths, which are pretty familiar to most people. They're not an owl, they're actually still a predatory bird. They're related to nightjars, they're in the nightjar family. And so you can see they've got these gigantic beaks, which is how they hunt their food. and they've got dainty little feet, so they're not doing much with them, just like Digby was before. And Donald, of course, isn't a raptor either. I don't know how she even knows where those feet are going. So what I want to do before I get too far into these two, or these two species, is get these tiny frogmouths to sit on some gloves. Now, for those of you in the front row, we've got something special for you, so we'll keep you out.
Bush is an Eastern Australian barn owl. She is a beautiful girl. The barn owls are found across most of Australia, including Kangaroo Island. You can find them across most of the country except for the Nullarbor, so there's just not enough tree hollows for them to roost in. But they are also found across most of the world, so you can find them on every continent except for Antarctica, so pretty widespread birds. Now, she is a very friendly barn owl, and for those of you that are sitting in the front row, this is why we're leaving you guys out of the front row firstly, because this girl's going to come and visit you in the front row. Now, what she's going to do though, is she's going to come and sit on your lap. In the long run, you'll see a reduction this year, yes, but you'll also see a reduction in your rabbit numbers. Come over here.
Hello again.
And that means you're going to end up with a worse and worse rodent problem over time. So there's a couple of options to avoid secondary poisoning when it comes to your owls. Firstly, not using poisons at all, particularly the nasty ones. The ones that are called second generation anticoagulants. They're really, really nasty for your rodents. They're also really, really nasty for predators. So there are some poisons that are more wildlife friendly, more natural ones that are coming out as well, as more education comes out, as more people learn about the effects of our poisons. There are some companies that are looking into better poisons and ones that are more natural and aren't going to harm your wildlife. You can also look into putting up nest in the nest box. They are happy birds. There you go, a little bit of spaghetti hanging out the end.
So how long will that keep it full for?
Well, all the food that I gave her along the laps as well will keep her good for 24 hours. So they do hunt fairly regularly. So yeah, she'll get usually about 50 grams of food in a day at the moment, and it'll be a bit more in winter, so they got a bit more fat on them for cold and a bit less in
So if you have two shows, does that mean she's now full for the next show?
No, we only use her for one show. We've got a stunt double that does it. Yeah. Yes, each of our shows is a little bit different, so you'll see something different every time.
Really good crack at trying to get them. So this is Boo. Boo's an Australian booble cow. This is the smallest owl species in Australia, and you can probably guess that straight away. Tiny little bird. Quite a different bird to the barn owl that you just saw though. These guys are from the other major family of owl that we get here in Australia. They're called a hawk owl, or they are called the hawk owls, or the Neonox owls. So your Titonidae owls are the ones that are using their face to listen. Your hawk owls are much more a vision-based hunting animal.
Oh, wow.
Very special boy for you. Yeah, this is Macaw. Macaw is a white-bellied sea eagle. They're our second largest raptor species in the country, just behind the wedge-tailed eagle. I'm not sure how many of you spotted it, but there was a wedge-tailed eagle soaring away from us just during the booble cow, which is pretty cool. But the white-bellied sea eagles are found all across the coastlines of Australia. They make their way up to about 300 kilometres or so inland on the eastern coast as well, into your inland rivers and streams. And you can see them around Kangaroo Island, of course, as well. So we've got a reasonably good population of sea eagles by South Australian standards anyway. But they tend to be a lot more common as you go further north into Queensland and Northern Territory. They're much more common up there. So the sea eagles are hunting mostly fish, as you would expect from a sea eagle. They'll also take things like sea snakes. You have a look at his scales on his feet. This gives him really good protection from a potential bite from a sea snake. They'll also take things like rabbits on land. They'll take fruit bats out of the air. I think it's pretty cool. They'll take crabs and freshwater turtles, so they're not super fussy, but for the most part they are eating fish. And when they're hunting fish, they will kind of cruise along the surface of the water and just stick their feet in, grab the fish and keep flying. They've got quite a lot of grip underneath their toes. You can see closely they've got spiky bits underneath their toes. So it kind of feels like the spiky part of Velcro underneath their feet. So that helps to give them a really good grip on a very slippery prey item. Now, unfortunately, they are an endangered species in South Australia. So, like I was mentioning, they're much more common up in Queensland, Northern Territory. Now, the main issue with them in South Australia is human disturbance. So, they're very, very shy when it comes to people coming near their nest sites. And they've done studies on South Australian sea eagles. They found if a human, in some cases, approaches within about 2 kilometres of their nest site, they'll abandon their chicks and their eggs. So they're that shy, yeah. 2 kilometres, yeah. You don't have to be doing anything terrifying. You can just be going for a walk, and nice and innocently, and they're just like, so scary. So, yes, they're he's a very sensitive boy, but in the wild they're really sensitive as well. So that's why around South Australia they have put in some parts of coastal walks are closed during their breeding season. It's to protect this sensitive species. Ospreys as well are another one of concern. So if you see those areas, make sure you abide by those signs. They are generally quite a ways into the walk, so you can still enjoy the first part of it. There's one down at Vivon Bay and down at D'Estrées Bay if you have the time to. They're spectacular walks, but you can do the first bit and enjoy that. And just don't do the 20-kilometre trail. You'll be sweet. Yeah. So you can still enjoy a fair bit of it. But yeah, some of the parts are closed for the protection of a breeding sea eagle. Oh, there's a very brave rooster in the bush there. He's just like, that might be worthwhile. You gonna come over here? These birds are pretty lazy when it comes to hunting. The difference between going to the supermarket and picking up your meat versus going to the farm and shooting it yourself and preparing it is pretty much why he doesn't go and hunt that rooster.
Learning on me. This is Chook. Chook's a blue and gold or blue and yellow macaw. Kira on my left hand, Chook on my right. Over in the centre perch, there's 2 birds there. On the left is Acacia, coming over to see us now. That's Acacia there. He's a Carnaby's black cockatoo or white-tailed black cockatoo. They're found in WA for the most part around the Perth region. Manny is the 4th bird in this group here, and Manny is a red-tailed black cockatoo as well. Now Kira's a female, Manny is a male, so it might look a little bit different to what you're expecting. Most people when we talk about red-tailed black cockatoos are expecting a completely black bird with a bright red tail panel, particularly for the male. He is still young, so as he grows up, he'll lose the spot and lose the colour, and he will turn into that really typical. Hey, Mum! He will turn into that really typical male red-tailed black cockatoo. But here it's very typical of a female. Now, black cockatoos are going to do some holds as well. They're using the black sleeves for these guys. They're really good for adults, so any adults that haven't had a crack with a bird yet, if you want to have a go, stick your hands up.
That's a bird. Beautiful girl here. This is Jeddah. Jeddah is a wedge-tailed eagle. Wedge-tailed eagles are our largest raptor species in the country. She weighs in at about 3.6 kilograms at the moment. They can get up to 5.5 kilograms, so they can get a fair bit heftier than her. Generally, they get bigger as you go further south. So having a bit more warmth about having a bit more fat on you when you're living in a cooler climate is a great advantage. So that's why they're generally bigger as you get further south in the country. They're found all across Australia. So we have a lot of them here on Kangaroo Island, as you saw one today, for those of you that didn't spot it. They're a really common species over here. That's because we have lots of food for them to eat, plenty of different snacks that I'll get into in a minute, and also plenty of nesting opportunities as well. Now they will hunt a variety of prey. They've got incredible strength in their talons, up to 700 psi, which means that they can take down things like rabbits and hares. They'll take wallabies, mostly brush-tailed possums here on Kangaroo Island as well, because we don't have rabbits or hares. They'll take swans, ducks, geese, and they can take anything up to the size of an adult kangaroo. So they can take very much bigger than themselves. The way they'll do that is they'll usually soar up above it first and they'll tire it out before they go in for the final kill. It's usually the big female that does that final kill. She'll dive down at around 100 kilometres an hour in a dive. Think about it, 3.5 kilograms to the back of the head at 100 k's. Not going to be a good time for that poor roo. And then they've got 700 psi in those feet to go straight to the back of the skull and kill that prey item. So they're incredible hunters. They've got amazing eyesight to find that prey in the first place as well. So they reckon that they can see the twitch of a rabbit's ear from a kilometre away. Wow. They can see 7 times the details of what you and I can see. What are you looking at, Jetty? You might be able to see that wedge tail hanging around. You guys can see it. Oh, that's a falcon. I was watching those before because the parrots were looking up going, ooh, what's that? So there's a kestrel doing that little hover there. There you go. Wild kestrel, there were 3 of them before, soaring up yonder. Oh yeah, there's one there.
Oh, up
There you
there,
go.
above our head.
That's that. We don't even need to do a bird show for you. Just sit here and show you wild birds. It's cool. So that is Australia's smallest raptor species there. One of a couple of our smallest raptor species, the Australian kestrel or Nanking kestrel, well known for their hovering ability, usually seen above paddocks. And you've got the largest raptor species in the country right here, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we have a lot of raptors here in Kangaroo Island, so keep an eye out for them. We have the luxury of our birds looking up to see the other raptors, so we can get a pretty good idea, and they'll start yelling at them if they see other rivals around.
Lots of animals eat venomous things, and if you have a healthy snake in Australia is really low. Like, you're more likely to die in the ambulance in a car crash than you are from the actual snake bite. So they shouldn't be that scary, in my opinion. They are just a little bit sneaky. I think that's the problem. But this is the second most venomous snake in the world. The one that's responsible for the most deaths and the most bites in Australia. Does anyone know what he is? Brown snake. Brown snake, yeah, very good. It's the eastern brown snake. So he's responsible for the most deaths and bites in Australia because he's the one that you're most likely going to come into contact with. They're up and down the east coast of Australia. They're in all of your major cities except for Perth and Hobart. Perth and Hobart. They're not here on the island. They're in mainland South Australia though, and they're all up and down the east coast. And they are attracted to the rodents. They're attracted to our homes. So you've got your piles of tin out in your back shed. You've got your wood pile. You've got your compost. You've got rodents. You've got nice places to hide. It's snake habitat. So if you are living in those sort of areas, you're going to have snakes attracted to your homes if you've got that sort of habitat. So prevention, the best medicine. It's really easy to not attract snakes to your home by not having rodents for a start. So you can do that by using your snap traps and putting up owl nest boxes and that sort of thing. No poisons, of course. If you came to the bird show, we'd probably drill that into you. But things like tin lying around, wood piles, all that sort of stuff are just perfect places for snakes to be hiding. So if you do have that sort of thing, then it's a great idea to be extra wary or remove it altogether if you're worried about it. I think it gives the snake a lot more confidence to be able to get away because they don't want to bite someone. Their venom is pretty much everything to them. That's their weapon, that's their way of catching food, that's their way of defending themselves, and it takes a lot of energy to produce that venom. Once they use it, but they've never fully recovered. Well, everyone's survived, they've never fully recovered. You'll have renal damage and organ failures for the rest of your life. So they are super toxic, but not considered a deadly snake. And it's got a lot to do with where they're living and how they're interacting with people. Alice Springs and Cooper Pedy and that sort of arid central part of Australia is where you're going to find these guys. But they're super toxic because they are mostly eating one thing. When you're living out in those sort of rural places, you don't have a whole lot of choice. These guys are rodent hunters that are evolved to eat rodents, and mostly they're going after long-haired rats. And so when you go after one species of something for eons of time, that species starts going, all right, we'll get a bit resistant to your venom. And so this guy goes, all right, we'll get a bit more venomous. So it's like this evolutionary cat and mouse game of we want to be a bit resistant, we don't want to keep dying from taipan bites, we're going to get a little bit more venomous because we want to eat those things. So their venom doesn't really have much to do with people at all. It is, of course, fun stats to say how many humans you can kill this tiny little thing. Let's kill a little worm. Fangs are so small, you don't notice it. So it's like a tiny little pinprick, like what was that, stick, leaf, I don't know, it's like a tickle. It doesn't bleed, it doesn't bruise, so the actual wound is next to nothing compared to like a python bite. You get bitten by a python, it bleeds, it hurts, you know about it. Whereas these guys, not really. So that's why people are getting into trouble the most with snakes, which is why it's really easy to not be bitten by snakes. But they're just so scary. People think that they're just hiding everywhere, and they do get into people's houses and that sort of thing. These ones. Shinglebacks, yep. Any other names? Stumpy, two-head, bobtail, sleepy lizard, pinecone lizard. They've got a million different names. Shingleback is the official name, but lots of South Australians call them stumpies or sleepy lizards. They pretty much all describe the way they look. They've got two heads. They look like pinecone. The double-headed thing is a defense against predators, because birds are going to be the most likely to go after something like this. Birds catch behind the back of the neck, and they can break the neck usually pretty quickly. So if they get the wrong end, he's under leaf litter, you get the wrong end, lizard swings around and bites you back. So that's supposed to make them let go, not let go. What's this?
Blue tongue.
Blue tongue. So that's your eastern blue tongue skink. So he's your classic bluey, eastern blue tongue skink or lizard. They've got a blue tongue as another defense thing. So that tongue is actually really handy for a lot of different reasons. For a start, it shines brightly under the ultraviolet, just like our little scorpions. Birds can see in the ultraviolet. So you come across something like this in the wild, it's got a really wide bit at the back of its tongue, so they'll flash out their big white tongue. That shines brightly, so it's like a bright blue shock response to anything that might come after it. It also is a poisonous colour. Apparently there's nothing you can eat that is blue that's actually edible, like even blueberries are purple apparently. So it's a high and poisonous, and also it's like a bright shock. And also a lot of snakes have a blue mouth, so it's also could be a snake, careful, I'm dangerous too. So it's just a deterrent, it's just all to try and deter predators. What's this? Spiky one. She's called a bearded dragon, central bearded dragon. We heard of that one before? Yeah, there we go. Again, named after the big beard she's got. So similar-ish to a frill neck in the sense that this girl gets a fright from something, she'll suck in air and puff out her skin and puff out her beard. They can make it look big and black really quickly. They can change their colours quite quickly. So big.
What do you call that? A handful of sticks. Is that two or three?
Hello, mister. I can see you.